Welcome to PhilSci Hub Research University, your ultimate guide on your next research project.
We will lay down the best practices in research ideation, literature review, experimental design, and data analysis to guide you as you carry out your research project. Learn from the PhilSci Hub team of research scientists and some invited subject matter experts. PhilSci Hub Research University will be your personal coach through every stage of your research project, from ideation to final assessment.
And the best part? It's absolutely free.
Visit us at philscihub.com and be part of this learning journey.
Let's learn and succeed together here at PhilSci Hub Research University. Welcome to PhilSci Hub Research University, your ultimate guide on your next research project.
We will lay down the best practices in research ideation, literature review, experimental design, and data analysis to guide you as you carry out your research project. Learn from the PhilSci Hub team of research scientists and some invited subject matter experts. PhilSci Hub Research University will be your personal coach through every stage of your research project, from ideation to final assessment.
And the best part? It's absolutely free.
Visit us at philscihub.com and be part of this learning journey.
Let's learn and succeed together here at PhilSci Hub Research University.
Mabuhay! Welcome to the Filipino Science Hub. Thank you for your continued support to this online platform. To our new participants, thank you for checking us out today, and we would like to officially welcome you to the PhilSci Hub family. Before we start the webinar, I would like to share some house rules in order to facilitate a smooth session. For our Zoom participants, we would appreciate it if you could turn your audio and video cameras off during the webinar. If you have questions or comments, feel free to type them on our Zoom chat box or YouTube live comments, and we will try to accommodate as much questions as possible. After the talk, we will have a 30-minute Q&A where the Zoom participants will have the opportunity to ask their questions live. For those who would like to receive a certificate of participation, a Google form link will be posted on our Zoom chat box, YouTube live comments, and YouTube video description towards the end of the webinar. Again, welcome to all our Zoom participants and YouTube live viewers. For those who are new and may not be familiar with who we are and what we do, allow me to share our mission and vision in the next few minutes. Filipino Science Hub is an online platform founded by our CEO, Filipino scientist, Dr. Jeffrey Camacho back in 2012. Currently, we are a registered nonprofit organization based in Houston, Texas, United States. Our mission is to promote STEM education and the culture of research among students and teachers in the Philippines and abroad. Our current global leadership team is comprised of volunteer Filipino scientists, seasoned STEM educators, and business executives across the globe. Our vision is to see a technology and innovation-driven Philippines, and we believe that this can be achieved by creating a new generation of well-rounded Filipino STEM enthusiasts. The vision is being carried out via our two major programs, the PhilSci Hub Ed program and the PhilSci Hub Research University. Through PhilSci Hub Ed, we are able to empower and support our teachers by strengthening STEM fundamentals education. We believe that this is important because the more equipped our STEM educators are, the more they can inspire students to pursue a career in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The other major program that drives our vision forward is PhilSci Hub Research University. This is where we provide tools for fundamentals of research and bring practicing scientists closer to the educational sector. Our official website is www.philscihub.com. This is where you can access all our materials such as webinars, tutorials, modules, virtual lab, and features, all of which are free. We are also present in several social media platforms, so follow us wherever you are most active on to get updated with our web events. Again, thank you for being with us this morning. To officially start our webinar, I would like to turn the virtual floor over to our host today.
Good morning sa lahat. Welcome again to our webinar, and thank you for joining with us this morning. So we are very honored this morning because we will be having a very special speaker who will be talking about nanotechnology and its applications for entrepreneurship in the Philippines. So to introduce our speaker for this morning, I would like to turn the virtual floor over to our CEO and founder, Dr. Jeffrey Bungkin. So Jeffrey?
Alright, magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Muli ako po si Jeffrey Bungkin, founder of Filipino Science Hub. So isa po akong Filipino scientist na nakabase dito sa Amerika. Kasama ko po ngayon si Dr. Lindy Boyles and this Dr. Connie Gibas, both parts of the leadership team of the Filipino Science Hub. So muli maraming salamat po sa patuloy ninyong pagsama sa amin sa kada Sabado ng umaga sa Pilipinas para po sa ating kumbaga pagbabahagi sa inyo ng mga storya ng mga ng iba't ibang eksperto mula sa iba't ibang areas ng STEM mula sa iba't ibang parte ng mundo. And today is a very special one, mainly because we will be featuring an innovator who's actually based in the Philippines and is practicing his craft to create something of value for the country. So ito naman, medyo ibang flavor po ngayong araw na ito kasi usually we deliver to you stories of educators or mga hardcore scientists who are engaged in fundamental science endeavors po kung sasabihin natin. But then this time around, we are actually we will be featuring a scientist who is also an entrepreneur at the same time. And I'm talking about Dr. Jerome Palaganas, who is the current co-founder and CEO of Nanotronics, a nanotechnology company based in the Philippines. And for today, he'll talk about things that you need to know about nanotechnology and its emerging applications for entrepreneurship in the Philippines. So, and it's my honor to give you an idea of his background. So at the moment po, he is an entrepreneur, but before that, he was a director at NSI, so a company based in the Philippines. And before that, he was a manager of various departments at Amcor Technologies. So sa Pilipinas din po ito, he was there for about 15 years. And he actually started his career as a process development engineer, I think like after his undergraduate degree. And he did it at Team Pacific Corporation. So ito po yung kanyang industrial background. Pero hahanga po kayo kasi he was able to practice sa industry while kumbaga backing up while building his academic kumbaga pedigree po. So he finished up his bachelor's degree in electronics communication engineering at Mapua University. After that, he took up his master's of business administration at the De La Salle University with high distinction. He also finished like his doctor of business administration degree from the same university. With the same level of honor. And then, hindi po siya natapos sa isang doctorate degree. He also pursued his PhD in material science and engineering at Mapua University. After that po, after finishing up his PhD, he was able to fly to the US to be a visiting professor at the Case Western Reserved University, where he conducted research on advanced polymers and additive manufacturing. So essentially, mga three-dimensional materials po natin. So without further ado, we would like to, it is Filipino Science Hub pleasure and honor to introduce to you double doctorate, Sir Dr. Jerome Palaganas. So sir, you may take the floor now. Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. Let me share my screen. Can you please enable my screen sharing again? I'm sorry.
Okay, it should work now, sir.
All right, thank you. Can you see the slides now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me go through this. Okay. So good morning again to everyone. And of course, it's nice to have you on a Saturday. Good evening to those participating, especially the host from the US. So I'm again Dr. Jerome Palaganas. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Nanotronics. So before I begin my talk, allow me to have a brief introduction about my company. So Nanotronics. So Nanotronics, by the way, it's in the Philippines. So we are a deep tech, green tech startup pioneering in the local production of nanotechnology materials for various industrial applications. And then, of course, we derive it coming from indigenous plants. Our key products right now are MTEX and also filament. So MTEX is basically cellulose nanocrystal. So we have pristine and also advanced, both derived coming from indigenous plants. And we have also filament or graphene oxide, which is well known in the industry or in the advanced world or it is actually dubbed as one of the strongest material in the world, and of course having various applications to almost all industries. Now, as a company, we started, or our startup started in 2014, but we only pivoted into nanotechnology materials in 2018, right after we came back to the Philippines coming from the US. And of course, we are a DOST funded company as a startup. And among others, we've been recognized by different institutions, both private and also government, as the following. So in 2020, we won the inaugural or the first Shell LiveWire competition. So besting 54 tech startups in the Philippines. We're the first Filipino deep tech startup who been accepted and also accelerated in plug and play Silicon Valley. And of course, we are a part of deep tech pioneers. It means that we belong to the top 20% of deep technology startups globally, coming from 116 countries. And of course, last year, we're fortunate to be recognized as one of the top 100 startups here in the Philippines. Among others, we're being supported by the Department of Science and Technology, the Department of Trade and Industry, the Board of Investments here, and also the Department of Agriculture. And we have local and international private and institutions are also supporting us in our journey. Now, let's start discussing about nanotechnology. So when you say nanotechnology, we are referring to extremely small things. So usually the reference would be anything smaller than 100 nanometer. So the application could be on wide range. So it could be either on materials, devices, electronics, and even nanobot. So here I have given in this slide the reference for 100 nanometer. So anything 100 nanometer down would be considered as nanotechnology. Now, to give you a reference how nanotechnology or nanotechnology particles is in terms of the dimension. So I have here different particles which is common to us. So we have at the farthest right, dust particles. So we also have the blood cells. So our red blood cells, typically like 7 micron. And then of course, another dust particle. And you can see that the bacteria, it's like 0.5 micron. And our coronavirus, by the way, is almost a nanotechnology because the actual coronavirus is around 0.14 micron or 140 nanometer. So the coronavirus is actually already falling into the category of like our nanotechnology. And nanotechnology as its history began so many years ago, like in the 1960s or 70s, wherein initially it is just a concept being developed, but through the years, as you can see on the slide, it has been developed further. So in 2004, there was actually a discovery or an isolation from one university in UK, wherein, of course, they won the Nobel Prize. So they discovered graphene during that time. But nowadays, we can see that there are a lot of applications, which is the topic of this talk, in the different industries that we are in today. Now, when we talk about nanotechnology, let's try to outline where nanotechnology is as a technology compared to the industry. In an industry, especially, or when you say a product, which is also applicable for nanotechnology, it has like 4 phases. One, you have introduction as the first phase, growth as second, we have maturity the third, and fourth would be decline. Some other products like television could actually go from maturity to decline, but eventually television today has a product extension phase. Now, when we talk about nanotechnology, so nanotechnology it's in a infancy stage, wherein we can see that it is now entering its growth stage. So growth stage usually it's double digits, so it's very fast, very steep. And we have like say more than 20 to 30 years for this technology to flourish and of course be applied widespread in the industry. Now 3D printing, which is a very related technology and of course part of the industry 4.0, has already entered its growth stage, and we see that there's a lot of applications now. In the Philippines, we're just on the tip of the iceberg, using 3D printing as part of like producing before PPEs during the pandemic, but 3D printing is more than the production of those, say, products. Now, for cars, it is supposed to be from maturity to decline, but due to the introduction of electric vehicle and also autonomous car, now it's actually evolving and going also to the product, its extension. So with the super ultra high definition TV, nowadays 4K resolution is no longer the standard, but the best there is actually an 8K resolution or 8,000 resolution, which is being powered by nanotechnology. Now, when we talk about nanotechnology in terms of the global market, it is actually experiencing, as I've said, a very big growth. So its compounded annual growth rate, as you can see here on the slide, is around 18.3%. And in the next 5 years, we expect that it will still grow on a very in a double-digit growth rate. And of course, the market for nanotechnology as of 2020 is close to 80 billion. So as you can see, it's already big, but it will continue to grow over the years. Now, these are the different applications of nanotechnology, as we can see. So it's like very diverse, coming from simple textile, coating, medical, food, electronics, and even in energy storage nowadays. So here in the Philippines, we are critical because we are actually having problems in terms of energy. So there are like brownouts already happening. And with nanotechnology, I believe that there will be a solution to this problem later on. Now, when we talk about like nanotechnology, especially for food, so where nanotechnology is today is that on the blue side or on the left side of the screen, you can see that the nanoscience or the nanochemistry is already being implemented nowadays. So these are in the forms of your emulsifier, which is being used for like different foods that we eat and also use nowadays. And of course, in terms of agriculture, so one of the applications of nanotechnology is like to improve the yield of the crops, especially in terms of production. So it's being used in fertilizer so that, of course, it effectively distribute different nutrients needed by the soil. So here, it's a simple diagram on how nanotechnology is being implemented in agriculture. So on the left side, you can see that, of course, during the formulation, this is how it should actually interact, especially with plants. And the different cycles that you can see here, how it affects the soil and also the efficiency in combination with Internet of Things. Now, of course, it can already been monitored and see how the growth rate or the efficiency of like the nanotechnology formulation is affecting the production or actually the growth of the plants or the agriculture. In terms of medicine, of course, nanotechnology has a lot of application. Number one, it's currently being used for diagnostics. Thanks to this, a lot of breakthrough has been done already. It's also being used for like targeting. So when you say targeting, it will be used as a drug delivery. So specifically a normal drug, when we ingest it, there are like different systems in the body which would actually react to it. But when you say targeting, it will only go to that specific part of the body. So it will not be, say, dissolved, on the non-key part that, of course, it's targeting. Once it hits the target, that's the only time that it would actually, say, open up and, of course, have the formulation exposed to that specific tissue or cell. Now, it's also being used today as part of the therapeutic mechanism, say, for cancer and, of course, a lot of diseases. So the problem or our issue on coronaviruses is actually part of the therapeutic mechanism on how, say, nanotechnology particle is currently used. Now, when you talk about medicine, so most recently, over the past 2 years, like 2020 until recently, thanks to nanotechnology, the two companies, namely Pfizer and also Moderna, has been able to create a formulation using their mRNA. So they use their mRNA, of course, to load it inside a lipid nanoparticle. So without that enclosure, of course, it will not be effective in terms of coming up with the T cells, or actually delivering the T cells that would protect us in terms of the coronavirus disease. Now, other parts of medicine in terms of application, so these are the different parts. So as I've said, drug delivery is one of which, cancer therapy, especially in the US. So I've been in the US, and one of the big hospitals there is actually using already nanotechnology as part of their system. Gene delivery is another part of the nanotechnology. So if you have heard about CRISP, so this is how they actually edit and actually, say, implement the use of nanotechnology. There's also the antiviral, antimicrobial resistance. There are specific nanoparticles like graphene oxide, which is very effective in terms of fighting or combating different bacteria and also the virus. So they have antibacterial, antiviral property. Diagnostic, so in combination with the current, say, medical devices today, and of course, using nanotechnology as part of the system, so it enhances the mechanism so that better or more effective diagnostic in terms of like advanced diseases can be administered. And also tissue engineering. So this is actually a very promising field that, of course, nanotechnology and medicine is going as of today. Now, I will not go through like the different nanoparticles available, but of course, I would just like to highlight several or a few nanoparticles which are very, say, widespread in terms of application. And secondly, the one that, of course, we can see very relevant or practical application in the industry and even in our daily life. So one of which is actually graphene or graphene oxide. So this is considered or dubbed as the world's strongest material. Particularly, it is because if you are familiar with, say, diamond, if we try to desynthesize, meaning if we try to break the component of diamond, what we can see is actually different layers of graphene. And the reverse is true. If we want, by the way, to synthesize a lab scale or a lab-grown diamond, we can use graphene, by the way, with, of course, combination of the process, temperature, and pressure to come up with synthetic graphene. The only difference between a synthetic diamond and, of course, a natural occurring diamond, it's the process. So natural usually it comes with like in volcanic eruption, wherein you have high heat and also pressure, wherein it's now being replicated in the laboratory scale, so that, of course, in terms of production of diamond, like for drilling purposes, it will be more inexpensive. Just also to expound on graphene, graphene is approximately 200 times stronger than steel. So as you can see, and of course, it has similar resistance to diamond, but it's much lighter. So currently, it's more conductive than copper. So take note, this is not metal. So this is actually a polymer. So it's like 5.8 times more conductive than copper. It has fire retardancy, antibacterial, and antiviral properties. So this is just one of the key studies using graphene right now in terms of like a sensor. So especially when we talk about the COVID-19. Way back March of 2020, this study has been published. And of course, here we can see that Graphene, it's used actually in combination with field effect transistor as a biosensor to detect coronavirus. So as early as March 2020, there is already, a way on how to detect coronavirus. But nowadays, we have a lot of like detection mechanism or sensors or like devices that we can use. And also we can actually buy it off the shelf from pharmacy. Another very exciting nanoparticle, it's actually nanocellulose or cellulose nanocrystal. And you would see here that there are a lot of applications for this particular nanoparticle. So primarily you can see the application in food, packaging, waste treatment, biomedicine, adhesives, cosmetic, electric, and of course optical in terms of devices, textile, and even on carbon capture. So another nanoparticle, which is getting already getting implemented in the industry, is what you call the carbon nanofiber. So I believe that some of you have heard of this. So here, vast applications also in solar cell, in sensors. You can see that this is being used today also in membranes for filtration, and even in filter, and also as a flexible conductor. So these are very conductive, say, material for a nanoparticle. Now, in the Philippines, so there are like implication in terms of like determining or actually the roadmap for nanotechnology. So the number one implication here is that the immediate financial and economic impact to the country, especially if we have like nanotechnology capability. So in classifying which to prioritize in terms of development, it is essential to know that, of course, the value of the technology to the country. As we can see with the various, say, application, having such materials available or locally available that can help research and development institutions and also universities can actually grow the industry. The next one is that, of course, we are looking at the availability of local skill and, of course, knowledge base. We're fortunate that we're one or of course, a few. We have two scientists, me and, of course, the co-founder, which are actually among the few who are actually experts in terms of the nanotechnology. In our company, we produce this locally, as I've already mentioned. We have started production of this since 2018 to date. So now we've been like serving not just the industry, but also we're serving the government, the Department of Science and Technology, and of course, various research and development institutions and universities here in the Philippines. And of course, the third item, it's about the present status and of course the production and technological development of nanotechnology. So this is very relevant to know, as of course we as a country need to have this. And of course, with respect to research and development, there is still a room for us to grow. And of course, we're looking at considering improving or actually say having more R&D or research and development expertise with regard to the technology. And of course, we're seeing that there are some breakthrough with the help of like the different government initiatives. So this will allow us to assess, of course, in terms of like trying to look at where the gap is in terms of research. And of course, in the near future, we're looking at, of course, the international exposure, which is already happening today, or homegrown. So from before coming from like foreign countries, so US, maybe Japan, or also from Europe. So we're trying to make this as local as possible. So if we can localize, then therefore there will be like more opportunity, not just for like having research and development, but of course in terms of having growth or application to the different industry. Now, these are the different areas which are being prioritized coming from the government. So I took the roadmap coming from Department of Science and Technology, and for them, these are the key critical areas that they want to prioritize. So namely, it's in coating that they can see that nanotechnology can be immediately applied in manufacturing. So they're looking at the application of weights in plastics. So this will be in packaging industry, and then sensor as an application. So primarily This would be used for like detecting diseases, as I mentioned, or also smart packaging for like sensors, so that of course agriculture would not be harmed or food would not be, could be preserved well on a very long period of time. Supercapacitors, so this would either actually in terms of storage, we are already as a country trying to embark more and more renewable energy. And of course, with the global crisis and the climate change, this priority or the priority for like using more renewable energy is already on the top level. But of course, for us to harness and maximize it, we need to have storage devices. And supercapacitors would be, or we call it secondary battery, would be one of the great things to have, not just in the Philippines, but also in different parts of like the world. And the last priority areas would be on fuel cell. So this would be critical, especially if we are embarking already on electric vehicles. So fuel cells has industrial applications as well, more than the automotive application. Now, in terms of trends, so allow me to give the trends which are happening globally in terms of like the nanotechnology application. So one of which is into the sustainable material. So here, this is actually coming from our own case studies from Nanotronics. We develop fully sustainable packaging material. You see on the left side, topmost, that of course, with our material, we're able to produce a coating which is already similar to the performance of polyethylene. So if you can imagine paper cup, biodegradable by itself because it is paper, but once you coat like say polyethylene, which is plastic, the entire paper cup, it's actually no longer biodegradable. So it becomes non-biodegradable. The goal is that, of course, using paper combining with nanotechnology, we can actually improve to have a product at the end of the day, sustainable. When I say sustainable, so we have highly renewable raw material. At the end of the day, it has to decompose also so that it goes on a circular cycle. For me, it's more of having the circular material rather than using recycled material, because recycled material, you can only say recycle twice. On the third time, you have to already use like virgin material, which is, as of today, it's inexpensive, but sooner or later with the implementation of like green accounting, so virgin materials of plastic will be more expensive. So accordingly, from one study, it will be 10 times more expensive. Now, down in terms of the data, we have seen that with the performance of like our material, it enhances the sealing property. Of course, we know for a fact that for paper, it's not inherently adhering to each other, unlike plastic. So we need to formulate a material adhesive which is also sustainable. So we have done that. Of course, we have already increased the performance of sealing here for the packaging by as much as 41%. 3D printing is one of the application also. So here we have developed a hydrogel wherein we improve the strength and also the toughness of the material by 400%. And this is now the ink that we use, or the raw material, the resin material that we use or we formulated in this study of ours is actually being used for 3D bioprinting. And we're talking to one of the research and development pharma institution wherein we can apply 3D bioprinting using our ink here in the Philippines already. Another application of 3D printing with the use of like nanotechnology, we call it already nanocomposite, would be on various applications like a breathable cast. So you're no longer using like cement cast, which is very inconvenient to use. The other one here, you can see that it can be used for like developing sole for shoes for diabetic treatment, prosthetic legs, and also for medical hearing aid. The item C and item D here, apart from improving, say, the mechanical properties, you have also to consider that since these are plastics, the reason why it is inconvenient, it is because it is made out of like a different material and not very compatible to our skin or to our cell or tissue. So with that, with nanotechnology, you can actually improve biocompatibility such that it actually creates soothing and also convenient effect for the user of the products. bioprinting, as I've said, it's one of the emerging, very, say, advanced application of combining nanotechnology and 3D printing. So it has been published like a couple of years ago that the first 3D printed cornea is already available from one university outside the Philippines. Another application of bioprinting is actually trying to recreate the different cells or tissues of the body. Here, it's been demonstrating that, of course, using different formulation, you can now actually grow an ear. They call this one a bionic ear. So it's not only aesthetically developed, but of course, it has function that for those having hearing problem, it can actually aid and, of course, improve hearing of the disabled person. Another application of combined bioprinting and also nanotechnology is actually the development of this 3D printed skin. So here you can actually graph this to, say, people being like that had an accident through the, say, for instance, fire, and also some like skin diseases. And for one company, say a pharma company, they would use it actually to replace, say, live animals like mouse or any other, so that they can test their formulation just to see whether or not it has an effect in terms of like the biocompatibility when used in the industry for consumer purposes. Now, there are different applications, as again, as I mentioned, for medical applications. So here you can see the micro needle. So it can actually replace our standard syringes wherein you have like big needles. So the micro needle actually gives us soothing comfort wherein it introduces also effectively the vaccine to our body. And the other application, as I mentioned, especially for biomedicine, it's on drug delivery, as you can see in the different here on the top right. And on the bottom here, you can see the development of like for tissue engineering using nanotechnology or nanoparticles. Now, allow me to share this video with you so that, of course, you can see how it is progressing, the nanotechnology in the global community. Sorry, it's having like technical difficulty. Anyway, let me continue. So for other opportunities for nanotechnology, so here I mentioned that, of course, it can help in a lot of ways for energy sector. Not only that we can actually develop fuel cells, but we can use it on different applications. So as part of that, I have here a case study wherein they develop an advanced electric vehicle, or we call it secondary battery, in terms of in use for electric vehicle. So formerly, almost 90 to 95% of, say, secondary batteries, especially for EV or renewable energy storage, are made out of lithium. But in this particular case, you will be surprised that it's now made out of like graphene. So the company who actually developed this is this company. So this is actually skeleton company or skeleton technology coming from Europe, wherein here the company is actually now being invested by, or they have received investment coming from Volkswagen, and of course in the US, famous is actually Tesla in terms of the electric vehicle and also the secondary battery. But in Europe, we have BMW and Volkswagen, and of course Volkswagen actually partner with skeleton companies in terms of like producing the next leading edge combination of secondary battery and also electric vehicle application. So this would actually replace our internal combustion engine. Just for your reference, most of the top-notch automotive producers, so namely like Honda, Toyota, Ford, GM, and of course the rest of the well-known brands globally, they are now shifting out of the petroleum-based or internal combustion engine cars, going towards electric vehicle production using secondary battery. And of course, in terms of like aiding the sustainable development growth, so nanotechnology are actually, one of the key, say, solution in terms of having the different measures implemented to answer the different sustainability development goals being promoted or being actually targeted by the United Nations. And of course, shifting from the technical side, allow me to share my journey as a technopreneur. So we're combining technology right now with entrepreneurship. So basically, we call it technopreneurship. So these are the different lessons that I've learned so far over the years. One is that if you want to be an entrepreneur or a technopreneur, you have to build competences. What do I mean by that? You see that over the course of time, I didn't actually stop in terms of improving myself. One, say, study or one degree or discipline leads to the other. I was not actually intending to pursue PhD in material science and engineering, but since there was a problem with one of our clients before, I want to solve it such that, of course, it will be very efficient and I will be able to relate and, of course, come up with a better solution. So I studied material science, not knowing that at the end of the day, I would be, having the degree or the advanced degree that, of course, comes with the study. Now, because of the different disciplines that I have, I'm more than capable in terms of not just seeing the opportunities coming, but of course, once the opportunity is already available, I will be able to seize it, leverage, and of course, maximize to my advantage. Because without the competencies, even if you have like different opportunities, it would be very hard for you, if not difficult, to maximize those opportunities. So competencies or competences, as we call it, is very much critical for you to prepare so that when the right opportunity comes, you will have success in terms of, maximizing not just your competencies, but also the opportunity. Second, find your passion. You've seen over the course of years that I am actually working from the industry before, but of course, I'm very passionate about research. So even at the start of my career, way back the early 90s, until today, I find that research and development, sciences, technology, it's in my heart. And then I find it even nowadays that, of course, without the reference of time, when I work, I can work long period of time without actually, minding time altogether. But of course, it's unhealthy if you do that. If you do that in a very long period of time. But what I'm saying is that if you don't love what you're doing, and therefore you consider it's a burden. So you would just be watching your watch if you mean like working 8 to 5, and then 5 would be it. So if you have the passion, it doesn't stop there. But of course, you want to be productive at the same time. You want to have something that you can deliver, not just for yourself, but also for the community. Take risk. Most of us are actually trained by our parents, especially when we go to school, study well, get a degree. Third is actually to get a job. So that's the usual thinking. But in my case, so I've learned throughout the course of my career is that that's not the only thing that we have to be contented with. So for me, I took risks in terms of say going into entrepreneurship or having a venture, though I know for a fact that there's a lot of opportunities out there wherein I can maximize all my discipline going towards a corporate career. But for me, it's more rewarding to have my own company. Of course, my boss is not myself, it's the customer. And of course, trying to serve the customer and also the community on a wider, say, objective or goal, it's much more rewarding than having to work for money for 8 to 5. And of course, at the end of the day, when you retire, you ask yourself, did I do my job? Am I happy throughout the 40, 50, or 60 years of my career? Next, it's building a strong team. So here, you cannot actually act alone as an entrepreneur. So you have to have your team. So when you say you recruit your team, make sure that there will be like diverse in terms of competences over there. So if you're good in one thing, so for instance, if you're good in technology or engineering or science, there must be someone who will balance you, who is also good maybe in business or in management. So at the end of the day, you will be a full organization, fully capable to capture, leverage, and also to maximize opportunity. Next, have resilience. So being an entrepreneur, it's not always, say, smooth sailing. It's more of like a marathon rather than a sprint. So there will be like very challenging times, and of course, during those times, you will be asking yourself, "Oh, how am I, or what am I doing? Why am I doing this?" And of course, if you have the passion, then therefore, one, it answers the why, and secondly, if you know where you're headed, and of course, you know that you can contribute more, then definitely that would give you motivation or initiative to pursue later on. Build a network. We are not designed, by the way, to live on one person or of course one organization alone. You need like to have different partners. So partnership in terms of like the customers, and you have also partnership with say other people or other organization. So that of course you're only as good as your technology and your suppliers. Without your suppliers, be it say on the material or the equipment side, you would not be able to come up with better and better technologies, or superior technology that you can offer in the future with your customer or with the community. Innovate always. So I'm not really a fan of like status quo. So as you can see, when I leave a company, it's always been part of which is that of course I'm no longer satisfied on the work that I'm doing. It's not just about money, it's also the motivation. Why I am actually say waking up every day, taking an 8 to 5 job. And of course, at the end of the day, so you go back home, take your dinner, and then go back to sleep. And then it's a cycle. So that will be like a cycle for 40 years. So after, retiring at 65, you will ask yourself, have I really accomplished something? And of course, innovating is part of like growing the product that you have so that you come up with, of course, your superior advantages, just like what we did in our case. So we build like layers of defense or superior competitive advantage over like similar product out there. So that of course, when we offer, there will be a big differentiation already. Last but not the least is actually all about the customer. So it's not just like selling to the customer, either your product or your service. It's not just also about achieving customer satisfaction. My goal, our goal as a company, as a corporation, or as a startup is we wanted to serve the customer with delight. If we can do this with all our customers, then therefore we're pretty much assured, and we know that, of course, over the years, those customers that we delighted would be our partner, and they won't actually say try to find another one who can actually supply them, because they're so much happy with the product or the services that you offer to them. So with that, thank you very much for listening. So I'm actually looking forward to the different questions that you have after this. Thank you and have a good day.
Ayan, ako maraming thank you so much, Dr. Jerome Palaganas, for the very rich talk. So ang dami po naming natutunan dyan. So I would just like to call on my co-facilitators for today, Dr. Dindy Boyles and Dr. Connie Giba. So para po sa ating audience members, we'll give Dr. Palaganas siguro po a few minutes for him to drink water and to rest. So while we go over some promotional materials po for some Filipino Science events and programs. So ayan. So allow me to share my screen po. Just a sec. Can you see my screen? Okay, so just to give you an idea po, para po sa mga audience members na first time po dito sa Filipino Science Hub. So ito pong event natin with Dr. Jerome Palaganas is actually part of the program that we call Filipino Science Hub Special Topics. So dito po sa Special Topics program natin, we invite experts from different STEM areas and from different parts of the world to share quite a bit about their STEM journeys and what they do for their career. So kaparehas po ng kay Sir Jerome Palaganas, he talked about his being a techpreneur. So sabi nga po niya kanina. And then, so over the course po of this, since we started this portfolio, we have featured a number of educators and scientists like Professor Elmer Rico Mojica, who delivered a talk about improving and learning inside of the classroom using action research. So Professor Mojica po is a professor of chemistry at Pace University in New York City. So we had this talk the other week. So yun pong recording ng kanyang webinar ay nasa ating Facebook. Ay nasa ating YouTube channel. So Philsci Hub TV, hanapin nyo lang po yan dyan sa YouTube. And then on May 13 po, so about 3 weeks or about 3 weeks ago, so we had Dr. Daniel Whiteson. So Dr. Daniel Whiteson is an accomplished professor of physics and astronomy at the University of California, Irvine. He is not only a prolific researcher and educator, but he is also a published science illustrator and author. So he talked about, so the title of his talk was We Have No Idea, A Guide to the Unknown of the Universe. So yung recording din po nito, nasa atin pong YouTube channel. And then, in the month of April, we actually had what we call Philsci Hub Biology Month. So nung Abril po, we featured a panel of leading Filipino biologists. So this was a 4-part series. We started with Dr. Marilyn Balolong from the UP College of, from UP Manila. She talked about evolving strategies to identify and functionally profile bacteria from communities. Her talk was followed by that of Dr. Mark Calabon. He talked about aquatic mycology. And then after that, we had Gloria Nika Lazaro from the UK, and she talked about yes and nuances of cancer drug discovery. And we capped this series with the talk of Dr. Euphrosina Atabay. So she actually shared some stories about the transformation of the Philippine carabao from a beast of burden to a beast of fortune. And para po sa ating mga guro, mga mag-aaral at sa ating mga audience members who may be interested in the area of mycology, we are also very proud to announce at first time po namin itong ilo-launch ngayon, Filipino Science Hub will have its very first summer camp. And this time around, we're actually going to be focusing on the fundamentals of mycobiology. So through this summer camp, you'll learn about the essentials of mycology from a panel of internationally renowned Filipino mycologists. And with us is one of them. So Dr. Connie Cañete Gibas, who is actually a clinical mycologist at the University of San Antonio Medical Center. She and together with Dr. Mark Calabon will deliver a series of 6 talks in the month of July. So ito po, this is open to all teachers, students, and essentially enthusiasts who would actually like to learn more about mycology. So ito po, this will be a fundraising event for Filipino Science Hub. Maniningil po kami ng konting registration fee, and we're going to be using the proceeds of this to support some of our projects para po sa ating mga grassroots program. So meron po tayong partnerships with public schools in the Philippines, and we will be using the proceeds of this event para po suportahan yung mga programa iyon. So we encourage you po to join us. So this again 6 courses over 4 Saturdays in July, and tomorrow po we will roll out or actually after this, an hour after this, we will roll out yung mechanism pa kung paano po kayo makaka-register dito sa event na ito. So we highly invite, we encourage you po to participate in this event. All right. So, Sir Jerome, are you ready for questions po? So we received like quite a number of questions, and you know we have enough time po to address like most of them. So I'll start by reading this one. So this was from sent to me privately via the Zoom chat box. So the question po is, how can students become nanotechnologists? So I think like your second question, which is more of a follow-up. Could you name college specializations that students may pursue to penetrate the field of nanotechnology in the future? So medyo graded yung question, sir.
Okay, so thank you for the question. Actually, for you to become nanotechnology, say, expert, any of the undergrad course. As you can see, my undergrad is actually not really related. It's like electronics and communications engineering. And you've seen that not even my master, when I first had my master, it's like business administration. So if you have an undergrad, if you focus on like STEM, so for me, it's a good enough fundamental. What matters is actually how you pursue your graduate, say, discipline. So your master's or your PhD. Of course, with that, it doesn't end, by the way, in theories and also like studying or having the having the degree at the end of the day. Because I know that, for instance, even if you have like material science and engineering PhD, it doesn't guarantee you that you will become an expert to nanotechnology. But what you can do is that actually say do practice, and of course, do not as a doctor or as a PhD, we're trained as a discipline to further, improve our knowledge and skills through reading like different, say, journals or like advanced journals. First and foremost, you can actually specialize in terms of your dissertation or your thesis, so that it familiarizes you already in terms of about nanotechnology, and of course that will give you like a first stage in terms of a real application on nanotechnology. But of course, further, if you can actually grow with a company which is already in this field, we're just fortunate, of course, with our expertise and my industry background, since I came from in the industry for like 2 decades. And I'm already working on research and development, new product introduction, and technology development, combining it with the special skills that I've earned later on. I was able to translate it into application, and then since I can actually look at problems and then solve the problems from the industry, so I'm very much in the position actually to come up with solutions for the company. So very much that would be my recommendation. So pursue specialization or focus if there are opportunities to work with such company or like companies or institution working on nanotechnology. That will be like a very good, say, uh, level or say environment that will be conducive for you to become expert. Because when you say expert, it has like many facets that you can consider. So one of which is actually, if you were given a problem, how can you convert your knowledge right now to solve the problem? And if you have the solution, how can I bring in the different technology or say like equipment or materials to the country? Because as one of the problems of the balik scientists here in the Philippines, they're expert in the field, but of course, their limitation right now is different equipment or facilities which are not present here. So if you would not be able to put it all together, in spite of you have the money, then again, that's another hurdle that can, that will actually hinder you in terms of solving the real life problem. So that will be my recommendation.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. So, all right, naku, maraming salamat po doon sa sagot na iyon, Sir Jerome. We're gonna move on to our next question. I'm just gonna have to share the screen because we captured it we transcribed it into a slide. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. All right, so let me know once you can see my screen. We're good? All right, so next question, sir. So apart from cellulose nanocrystals or CNCs and graphene oxide, are there any possibilities and opportunities, I guess, like for other nanomaterials for development? And the follow-up question to that is, how are these materials selected if they will fit for nano, if they're a good fit for nanotechnology application? So siguro po, how do you screen materials po, or design materials?
The answer to the first question, these are just some, but these are the most, say, the wider range in terms of application. Because for like a nanoclade, so just naming one of the nanoparticles, it has very limited application. So as much as possible, in our case, what we do is that come up or try to select nanomaterials wherein once we produce it, we're not only limited in just one or two applications. Because imagine if you are a manufacturing right now and then coming up with like different say nanomaterial or particle facility, that will be like very capital intensive. And as you know, unlike in the US or Singapore, the Philippines, one of the problems here is actually funding. If we get, if we can just have access to funding both in the government institution or also coming from venture capitalists, we would be very much in a position. But even if you have that, then of course another problem there is how fast can you bring in, say, those resources to translate it into manufacturing capability. So the parameters of selecting, it's actually based on the things that I mentioned. So we wanted something that, of course, it has wider range of application. The two nanoparticles that we mentioned are actually of wide range to almost all industry. So that, of course, in one industry, we can just functionalize or actually customize it so that it fits the requirement of that industry. But basically, it's the same nanomaterials that we're producing. So added to that is we have the capability to advance those nanomaterial as it is today. And then the other criteria, of course, of the selection is that how near it is the nanoparticle, how relevant it is to like the industry that we wish to serve. Because in spite of the fact that you have many applications, you're only limited by your 24-hour time. And as a company, or also as management, apart from say financial or what you call your say your capital expenditure, time is also another constraint that you have. So you have to make sure that you can deliver on the industries that you're targeting. If you cannot, then therefore it will be like a failure on our part. So if those are say if the problem that we're looking needs another nanoparticle, we can actually, if available, buy it. But if there will be like of a huge quantity that we need to supply, then it's better that of course we produce it internally, so that of course in terms of economies of scale, we can actually bring down the cost and of course serve the industry, which would be benefiting, by the way, to the translation of our R&D to the production cost. And of course, this will serve the community and also like the public later on. And it will be like available and affordable to almost everyone. So that's how we select, narrow down, and of course target nanoparticles for production. But basically in our case, the first nanoparticle, especially the cellulose nanocrystal, with the discussion with the DOST, I haven't actually shared with you, we are part of the program of the DOST Human Resources Program. So if you're familiar with DOST, we have the 6 Ps. One of the Ps is actually product. And of course, since we are very familiar with nanotechnology, we want to localize it. And second, we want to have sustainable materials as part of the raw material. As you can see that during the pandemic, supply chain has been an issue, right? So chip companies right now, like semiconductors, they're scrambling because there's a big backlog, and with the disruption in the supply chain, it's like years already before they can even produce that particular chip to a particular company. So we want something which is already local and of course highly renewable. When you say highly renewable, something that we can actually say harvest or harness more than once or 3 times in a year. So that would be like a favorable, say, advantage for us if we have a local supply chain using local material, which is highly renewable.
Okay, sir, thank you. Napakaganda po ng sagot niyo. Siguro po, synthesizing from it, no, and yung appreciation ko kasi sir is coming from a catalysis background. So essentially materials development rin. So siguro po, para po dun sa siguro sa kabatiran ng ating audience members who are more nasa academic sector, siguro po nanotechnology has been there and it continues to be, like an ever-growing area of development na po. So from a scientific curiosity perspective po, kung makikita niyo yung mga papers, ang dami nilang mga iba't ibang klase ng materials na na-develop out there. For example, merong mga unique compositions, diba sir? Pero yung sinasabi po kasi ni Sir Jerome is that if you're actually gonna practice nanotechnology or nanomaterials development, more specifically in the country, what's most important po is kapag nagbabala kayo na mag-screen ng certain materials, you also have to look at the fundamentals. So that being, yung materials na kailangan nyo, dapat meron tayong access. So that's more for yung industrial purpose. So yung sinasabi ni sir na economies of scale. So kung may nakaka-access ka ng maliit na quantity ng material na yan, and if you get to develop it into a technology that could become a product, so sinasabi ni sir, dapat meron kang access dun sa mga raw materials para you can scale it up. So yun po, mahalagang aspeto po. And ito, we rarely talk about this sa mga webinars po sa Filipino Science Hub kasi bihira din po tayo makaimbita ng mga kaparehas si Sir Jerome na scientist and at the same time entrepreneur rin. So thank you so much, sir. So these are like very important teaching points po para sa ating community. All right, so I will share that the next question. Perhaps Dr. Lindy Boyles can ask this question. Ay, ate, you're on mute. Yan.
Okay, ayan. So, medyo futuristic po itong question now.
But worth asking.
So, the question is there an animal sensor made from nanotechnology that I can use to understand my pet? Ayan, how much will this cost?
So we thought of asking this. Siguro, sir, kasi Sir Jerome, for someone like you, for you to also like, provide some perspective po. Gano'n na ba ka-advance ang nanotechnology? Are these things that are already possible these days?
Okay, so let's answer first your question. So it's very advanced nowadays, as I mentioned. It has enabled a lot of like application. I'm not sure if you're aware of the touch technology of your cell phone right now is nanotechnology. So in the absence of the nanotechnology, we will be back on the first introduction. If you remember Samsung, their touch phone. So you have to press it very, very hard for you to actually say, have an interface and communication, to smoothly. So that was, during those times, I find it very, very inconvenient. And there are still cell phones actually today existing, which are still inconvenient. But the ones which are really real-time responsive is actually, there is like nanotechnology in it. If you have heard about Huawei, and they said that, of course, their battery and the thermal management is actually very effective, meaning it's not heating. They're using also nanotechnology, by the way, to diffuse actually the battery so that it will not heat up even in a very long conversation. Our super ultra high definition television, it's made out of like quantum dots. Again, quantum dots makes a lot of, it actually gives more flavor on colors. That's the reason why if you're watching like, say, an 8K resolution television, especially in the US right now, which is now a standard, you will very much appreciate the different colors, of course. And that's through the nanotechnology. And of course, as I mentioned early on, the vaccines that we have, so the mRNA, thanks to nanotechnology. So it's actually a drug delivery system that enables, by the way, those mRNA to be delivered to the specific cells of the body so that, of course, it can grow and, of course, do its function. So that's also part of the nanotechnology. Now, let's go back to the question coming from, the viewer. Depending on what you need on your pet, because it can be done in terms of having like sensors for like using nanotechnology, because of course, even in the industry right now, nanotechnologies are being used for sensors for industrial applications. But of course, they combine it with IoT or Internet of Things, so that of course it can communicate. It's being used today, sensors for like plants, for crops. So with IoT, they can actually see the growth and also the different behavior of plants. So it can be done on the pet, scenario. But I'm not really sure on like, say, what kind of application they want to see for their pets. Okay, but just to ask me if that's possible, it can be done because, as I've said, industry, so like large industrial, they're using it as a sensor to monitor performance or even to prevent, by the way, breakage or, hard, they call it hard down on the system. Even super advanced cars like Ferrari, they have like nanotechnology sensors also, device using this as a mechanism to detect already like advanced failure for the cars, especially if you are like in a Formula One, then therefore it will be like fatal if you have such kind of failure happening without you detecting on a very, very high speed. Imagine traveling at like 300 miles per hour. It's like having a plane rolling, by the way, on the streets of like Formula One.
So siguro po, yeah, very important points that Dr. Palaganas mentioned that, nanotechnology is already advanced significantly, but I think it is also safe to say that it still has a long way to go. So kumbaga far-reaching pa po yung possible impacts niyan in terms of kumbaga technologies that could really impact the society, medyo ang layo pa po na marami. There's still like a lot of possibilities that could come out of it. Ayan. So, hintay lang po tayo doon sa ating sensor para po sa mga pusa. Pero who knows, like it might happen like in the next few years from now. Pero yun po, thinking about, like where we were like 20 or 30 years ago and where we are now, sinabi nga po na sir yung ating cell phones ngayon, it was only a matter of what, like a few years, like about at least like a decade since yung phones na talagang parang pinipisil mo. Ayan. All right. So siguro po we're gonna move on to the next question and we're gonna ask Dr. Gibas to ask this question.
Okay. So could you comment on the status of nanotechnology research and development in the Philippines? If any, what are the field's key challenges?
Ayan.
Okay. So thank you so much for that question. Actually, it's part of the presentation that I presented early on. So here in the Philippines, nanotechnology is like still on the introduction. These are being developed right now in terms of like not just functionalizing or synthesizing, but having it translated into applications in the industry by different universities here in the Philippines. For instance, UP, UPLB, and of course, the other regional development institution in the Visayas are also, from north up to like the southern part of the country, they are right now moving towards researching or advancing nanotechnology. But I haven't seen yet, a company who has forwarded in a way that, of course, they have already like a full implementation of, say, nanotechnology. So it's still a gap right now in the Philippines. We're in fact, like the Department of Science and Technology and also the different industry associations, they're asking like there should be more like academic and also like university or industry linkages so that the transfer of knowledge to application and of course vice versa, the feedback from the industry could hasten or could actually expedite the implementation of the technology. We're just fortunate because we came from the US and for that reason and the other disciplines that I have, having been in the industry for almost 2 decades. So it gives me the opportunity, by the way, to translate very fast the requirements from the industry. So I can actually see already what's coming. And it's just a matter of time finding the different companies who are in this situation. And of course, talking to them, translating to them the solution that they need. And of course, delivering the final product, which is not just, the nanomaterial product. Sometimes we translate it to an end product by itself so that, of course, it can be readily be used and say, disseminated for actual application for public use. So there's still a big room accordingly from the Department of Science and Technology's roadmap. They said that there's like 2 years still for the development. And the other thing is actually the funding. So and like in advanced countries or the first world country like US, Japan, Korea, or also in UK, Germany, wherein if we talk about nanotechnology, funding is actually already been there. Here in the Philippines, funding is like a constraint, both in the industry and also in the academic, especially if you talk about the government funding. In the industry, in the Philippines, not so much research and development going on, but if you talk about like first world country R&D on nanotechnology, I can say that, of course, the reason why US is because they've been developing this for not just many years, but I see like a lot of like different applications coming out of like, for instance, when we talk about graphene, we cannot imagine that it was actually possible to make the graphene a full battery. Before, it's just one of the many components. But now, Germany has pushed it forward so that the reliance on rare earth metal like lithium, which sooner or later will not be sustainable, will be out of the question. So there's still a big gap, and I think room for improvement here in the Philippines. So let's see in the next couple of years, and we're just wishing that, of course, it move forward so that the Philippines would be very competitive also, if not with the world, but with our neighboring, say, ASEAN brothers and sisters.
Sir, siguro po, like you raised like a few very important points that, you know, infrastructure development is actually going there. There's support coming from the government as well, and then there are some calls from the private sector rin po. You know, for there to be strategic linkages para po, kumbaga, yung mga technologies that we're developing, kumbaga, ma-commercialize siya. But siguro, sir, I would just like to ask a follow-up question. So with all these, kumbaga, organization on like coming up, could you actually say that, like, from a human resource capital perspective, do we have enough experts? Do we have enough people, you know, like to push to essentially achieve itong roadmap na ito?
Very good question. For now, it's actually also a challenge here in the Philippines because in the Philippines, and like in the US, there's like discipline. So I've seen like PhD in nanotechnology, or there is a degree already like a PhD in polymer science and engineering. So technically, nanotechnology is just one of the branches under that discipline. And there are so many like discipline to forward, by the way, so that you can come up with the needed skills and discipline for like nanotechnology in the Philippines. The best that we can actually have, which is more or less there already, but not yet there. We have like, say, PhD in physics, in chemistry, maybe material science, but of course this is still limited. And I'm aware that you are aware of these things, that material science and polymer science are totally different. So what applies to material science is basically it's more into solids. When you look at like material science, now you're dealing with aqueous and also like, you know, amorphous crystalline, which is fundamentally not a perfect solid. So the different disciplines are actually the different background being taught under the polymer science. It has basically a different field in terms of chemistry, physics, you know, of that material, of the polymer, and also the thermodynamics. Totally, though slightly related, but it has like very specific in terms of like the advancement. And with nanotechnology right now, it's very fast in terms of advancement. So in just 1 or 2 years, you can see that it progressed very significantly. Even with COVID right now, you can see that the application of nanotechnology, all of a sudden, there is a solution thanks to nanotechnology. But the problem there is that it's the industry who's actually, you know, driving the need for nanotechnology. And we cannot see it here yet in the Philippines in terms of like the academic or the university pushing for it as a degree. Perhaps again, there's like a knowledge, say, problem, because for you to have like a university degree for this, you need to have like, you know, pools of people who are already not just skilled or not just having the degree, but also the capability to further research. So there is like a gap in terms of like the talent. So we're just fortunate in my team. We have like the two, you know, two scientists who's very capable to do that. And I see that this is another area for improvement here in the country.
Okay, so siguro po, message lang po sa mga educators and students like out there, if you are taking an interest like in nanotechnology, so I think it's also good to know that pag nag-pursue kayo ng college degrees or specializations or even research specializations na nasa nanotechnology, meron tayong mga kumpanya in the Philippines na pwede din kayong mapuntahan after your degree. So yan. And you know, nung mga panahon namin, siguro yung mga fields na hinahanap namin, hindi namin mapapractice sa Philippines. That's why we go out. But then now, meron mga kumpanyang binubuo na sa Pilipinas, hindi nyo na kailangan lumabas. And you know, like if you practice it in the Philippines, you will surely create value for the Philippines. I think which is like a very important aspect of what Sir Palaganas and his team are doing. Okay. So moving on to the next questions, actually meron po mga pumapasok na questions that we're trying to actively capture. So ito po naman, question from Zoom, is there any special handling and business management in the production of nanomaterials as compared to conventional materials? So siguro sir, ito related to dun sa next question, basahin ko na rin po, pag-isahin na lang natin. So from a policy perspective, does the Philippines have established health and safety standards for handling nanomaterials? So yun po. So siguro po yung unang tanong sir is like from a business standpoint, paano ba? Are there sensitivities around handling nanomaterials that we may or we may not have to check out para po in comparison po sa pag-handle ng mga traditional solid materials natin.
Okay.
And
So
then may policy po ba?
for nanomaterial right now, here in the Philippines, as part of the DTI and also DOST, so they're coming up with a guideline in terms of like the safety management and handling of nanotechnology materials. In terms of being safe, it's actually safe, but of course, in terms of like how safe is safe, there's only for any like chemicals per se. Even though it is safe, there's also a limit on the exposure. So to prevent this problem, so there is a requirement if you're handling like nanomaterial or doing nanomaterial production to use actually safety precautions. So you have your PPEs. So in our production, so we have a full PPE in place, just to make sure. And in terms of management, so not just PPEs, because since you're dealing with like chemicals, you need to have like safety protocols also, because to extract or to produce this nanomaterials, there are like different processes that you have to be oriented, and safety procedures are very crucial or in place in our management, and how we handle also the byproduct or the waste, because at the end of the day, for any processes, for any companies, for any industries, there's always a byproduct. So the byproduct, of course, you have to make sure that as much as possible, you reduce the amount of waste that you will be producing. And then we do proper segregation of waste. And, people from the chemical industries are actually very familiar on, how to treat and how to say proper and label, different waste materials. So at the end of the day, this would be handled and also treated, so that when it is disposed in the environment, of course, it will be friendly already to the environment. So you just don't just dispose acid by Louis in the lakes or in the sea. So it's a no-no. So we do like have like special handling requirements, even up to the byproduct of our waste.
So siguro sir, hypothetical question po as a follow-up to this, kasi I think this is a very important aspect of handling of nanomaterials, no? So siguro sir, if there's someone from the audience na merong na-discover na material, no, that they would like to commercialize, how, like, anong agencies po ang dapat nilang lapitan for them to, essentially qualify or certify their materials and essentially have it registered and ma-establish po ano ba yung mga health and safety protocols na kailangan po talagang i-practice, sa handling those materials. Meron po bang government agencies na pwedeng mapuntahan?
Yes, actually, this is related to the previous question about the skincare product. So primarily, just to make sure, you can actually have it tested to the Department of Science and Technology. So they have already instituted a facility on how to do measurements of the different things needed to test nanotechnology or nanoparticles. When it comes to the use of like related to food or related to cosmetics, which at the end of the day would end up, us using, there is the FDA that they can actually go to. So it has to undergo certification that, of course, the end product, that they will be producing will not harm the user or say the consumer at the end of the day. So those are the two institutions that could help you in terms of one in the production, and second is in terms of commercializing, making your product available to the public.
All right. Ayan. So siguro sir, yung next question medyo nasilip nyo, no? Pero ito ipapabato din natin to kay Dr. Boyle. So this question is actually highly relatable sa mga momshies sa audience. Dr. Boyle?
Yeah. So what are the examples of skincare products that contains nanoparticles, and are they safe?
I can answer it on a very general term. I know one leading cosmetic products going into like nanoparticles for the reason of like sustainability, because I'm not sure if everyone is aware of, sooner or later, the petroleum or fossil-based fuel, which is also the one we're using the derivatives for our plastics, will soon be out. They said like one of the books or one of the studies, it's like in 2050, the reason why Dubai or UAE right now, it's transforming its industry from an oil-dependent country into something else, maybe tourism or maybe financial, where in their positioning their country. So different countries, or sorry, different companies in the world are looking at alternative source, and they wanted something which is sustainable. And for you to be sustainable, so primarily there is no other alternative but to be bio-based. So this leading company is trying to make, as not just part of their product, but as part of their sustainability roadmap, corporate strategic roadmap, that at the end of 2030, 2050, their products are already, we call it sustainable. So when you say sustainable, it's bio-based, and of course, it's highly renewable. Second, if we use it, and therefore it would not cause harm in any way to us, because at the end of the day, we come to, if you try to think of it, you're actually putting like plastics, microplastics, you call it, like, say, the makeup that people are using today. So if it will be bio-based, and therefore the assumption really there is that it will be not just healthier, but of course it will be friendlier and more compatible to us, when we're using the product. Yes, there are like developments, but of course I cannot tell which of the products are going to that. But in terms of safety for nanoparticles, we've been like treated with vaccines, and for a fact that those are like nanoparticles or using nanotechnology. So in my case, I have like booster shots, so like 3 dosage already of the vaccine, and those are using nanotechnology. So the nanotechnology is like a means so that of course they can produce more effective ways in terms of like delivering the targeted function of, like, say, a medication, a vaccine. So in this case, you're asking, say, for cosmetics or for skincare. Again, nanotechnology, as I mentioned as early part of my presentation, it's being used for cancer diagnostics. So imagine if you have cancer, then introduce nanotechnology. That nanotechnology particle would seek actually the tissues that's having the problem, so that at the end of the day, you can be diagnosed more effectively, so that even the next generation, say, medical devices would be able to give more information, so that the proper treatment for you, if you have like cancer, then of course it will be more effective for the medical profession. So nanotechnology wise, it should not be a concern, as long as of course the product, the devices, or anything which is being used with the nanotechnology has certification or has passed the certain standards that it is being required.
Yan. All right. So, next question naman, sir. So, ito, ano po, this is more environmental in nature, no? So, the question po, this is from YouTube. So, are there harmful effects of nanomaterial waste products used in manufacturing industries in the environment when they are not properly disposed of? So, what can you say about nano pollution? Yeah.
Actually,
so sir, what happens if nanomaterials get mishandled? So, ayun sir. So siguro sir, let's put it in the context po of what you're doing for your company. You produce products. So essentially, sir, like from your perspective, like with the products that your company is producing, how do we actually ensure that materials are handled properly and that wala tayong leakage sa environment? Ano po bang ating mga iniiwasan when it comes to these types of materials?
Yeah, actually, as I mentioned early on, we do have as much as possible. So we have segregation of the different chemicals that we're using. And of course, say for instance, there would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, like say segregation. So for each of like the different byproducts, it would be treated accordingly, even before it's actually being exposed, or say will be disposed of to, like, say for instance, land or even on water. So at the end of the day, it's been properly treated, so that of course it will not harm not the environment in any way. But nonetheless, as I've said, our nanomaterial, it's bio-based, at the same time biodegradable. So for instance, even if I use it for packaging product, for instance, so this is like more intentional. So it's not just something which is already a byproduct. And with the packaging material combined with the nanomaterial. So our target is that at the end of the day, it is biodegradable, compostable, and of course, it would comply to the sustainability requirement. So it would just recycle and then grow as plant, as part of the nutrients of the plant, and then we can use it as a product, and then it goes the entire cycle. So that's one of the key goals that we have, to have like not just an advance, but also a sustainable nanomaterials, not just production, but also product as well.
Okay, all right. So sana po na nasagot ni Sir yung question na to, medyo general siya, pero maganda po yung ginawa ni Sir kasi, you know, like in the context of like what they do and the products that they produce, na meron naman po silang mga measures in place to make sure that wala po talagang deleterious impact yung mga products at saka yung kanilang mga production processes sa environment, which I think is, you know, like the hallmark of very responsible companies. Ayan. So, okay, so we'll move on to the next question naman po. So, sir, I will just like mention this just to acknowledge the question, pero I think you actually have answered this. You have a slide which essentially talks about, which answers this question. So, yung tinatanong po ng ating audience member was like, it says that, what was your experience, what was it like transitioning a scientific idea into a startup company? And, you know, could you share about the challenges and rewards of being a techpreneur? So ito po, medyo nasagot naman na to ni Sir dun sa kanyang slides. Unless meron kayong gustong idagdag, Sir.
Yeah, the experience of transitioning like this idea. So as I've said, it all boils down to not just your experience, because even prior to this, I've been working in the industry as a professional, you know, for more than or close to 3 decades already. And then there is already a specific problem that I need to solve out there. So when we went to the US, when I look at like this opportunity, so it's like an aha moment. So it's like eureka, I find a cure. So I said, I want to master this, and of course bring it back and then translate it so that it will be local already, and then there's a local flavor, so that of course we will be helping countryside development as well, because these are like tier 3, tier 4, you know, crops in the Philippines, low value, but in case that we transform it to nanotechnology, it becomes higher value. So the transition, it's challenging, but of course, you can actually make it or materialize it as long as you have the proper skills, you know, the resources, and of course the experience also. Because in the absence of one of those, I know one startup, they have like the product, they have the funding, but they don't know how to, you know, scale up the company. So at the end of the day, it will be a failure, because once you have already the funding, the marching order there is for you to scale up, so that of course you can commercialize, produce it for the masses or for the public. The absence of that transition, then therefore it will be very difficult, and then that would end your, you know, your startup. Now the experience and of course the rewards. So for me, the reward is that as I see the product, as we actually grow the product, we've been helping like different institutions or even SMEs, so we're actually happy. So at the end of the day, for any corporation, one of your goals is actually to do customer satisfaction, right? Because in the absence of the customer, at the end of the day, you don't have buyers. So one of my rules is that rule number 3, the customer pays the bill. So if there's no customer, you know, no one would actually be buying your product, and at the end of the day, it will actually fold your company altogether. So that's one. 2 is that we've been, you know, instrumental. So we've been actually helping if we are needed as a resource by DTI, also by DOST and some government institutions to craft policies, as I mentioned early on, about like safeties and also like protocols. Since we don't just have the theoretical experience, but we have the manufacturing experience as well, and we've translated into different products, and then we are more in a position, you know, to actually give them more substance on the policies that they're creating. And then third, we are actually generating more employment opportunities for the country, and we're putting actually not just our company but also the Philippines in, you know, in the map or in the global technological, you know, map. So as you've seen in the presentation, we're not just locally recognized, but we have international recognition as well. So we bring honor in a way to the Philippines. And that's also one of our goals. And then that's one way also for us to contribute, to things given to us and opportunities given to us by the Department of Science and Technology. So we're very glad, we're very happy. And, I'm happy because one, I don't have to think about time. So there's no one pressuring me, hey, wake up. It's already like 6 a.m. in the morning. And then, hey, you have to go home already. It's like 6 p.m. already in the evening. When we do our work, especially during the startup time, the times is that it's already like 3 a.m. But since we're doing synthesis, you know the experience, we cannot terminate it outright. Since we have a procedure, so we have to do it all the way. But since it's fortunate that the house is like very near our facility, so we just change clothes, have some nap, take breakfast, and then go back again. Because since we have the passion, we love what we're doing, and then there's like nothing that can stop us except of course time, since we're only given 24 hours, to do the job. And then we see a lot of benefits, and then of course, nothing is more rewarding than this. And we see different potential. We hope that we grow the company, and of course, it helps like a lot of industries here in the Philippines. Though we have like potential also to serve other companies regionally, and we're actually glad to help their roadmap towards achieving sustainability, both local and international.
All right, sir, thank you so much for that answer. And so I think we're actually down to our last question. So let me share my screen. So ito po, siguro po, I think nadaplisan nyo na rin po ito kanina during your talk. So are there professional organizations in the Philippines for nanotechnology experts and enthusiasts?
For the nanotechnology experts, there's a committee formed by DTI and of course by DOST. So there is this nanotechnology technical committee. So it involves like not just the policymaker. So it's not just the agencies of those two, the two agencies from the government, but also academic people who are into this field. And as much as possible, they wanted also to people, especially in the industry, to get involved so that of course it can contribute and then substantiate and help also in crafting the policies. We're just fortunate, by the way, in the industry so far. We're the first one. So given that opportunity, sometimes we're invited to like different conferences, exhibits, meeting other countries who has like more advanced. But of course, since we have the experience, we can relate to them, and then we can translate and then have a better conversation with those countries, and then bring about the learnings and share it, of course, with the different agencies or the policymakers here in the Philippines. So in terms of like outside the technical committee, I haven't seen one. If there will be, of course, I will be happy, to join. But currently, if you would ask me if I want to form one, sorry, I'm currently so busy. So maybe in the future, once we stabilize, because there's a lot on the plate that we have right now. Because of the different opportunities for us, time is so crucial. So if not for conferences, then therefore we will be doing like different R&Ds for the different problems that we're solving for different, companies out there.
All right. So siguro sir, and at this point, we would also like to thank yung 75 po natin na live participants from Zoom and YouTube, so combined. So we have like a fairly good turnout today. So siguro sir, last final message po, kasi we have educators and students rin po, and perhaps nanotechnology enthusiasts like in the audience. Could you actually send some messages of encouragement po para dito sa ating mga participants rin?
Okay, so let's start with the students right now. So one, thank you for attending, by the way, this session. So actually, I wish that you've learned a lot of insights about the future of this technology. So I'm encouraging, and actually I'm inviting you to go through the STEM program, and of course, at the end of the day, be one of the experts here in the Philippines, if not the world, on nanotechnology. For the educators, actually, I'm actually recommending that you expound or you actually say still do further study. So for you to teach actually such kind of say knowledge on nanotechnology, you must not just rely on books or even conferences. So I invite you to actually dig more coming from journals, because there are journals out there that you can actually say retrieve and say get more knowledge. Because in our case, as part of our discipline as doctors, the journals, since they're more up to date, books by the way are history, since if you write it, it takes like 2 years to publish, and then of course like one more year for it to be, you know, in circulation. So technically it's like history, like 3 years ago. So whatever is update or the update that you need, it's actually found on like different research. And actually I encourage educators to go further. So be it as part of your curriculum, put the research as part of it, so that as early as possible, be it like in senior high school or even in the undergrad, there is already the initial discipline needed, so that it becomes a pillar later on. Because as you can see, you have to build the different pillars or fundamentals even before you even go to the full mastery. But the initial or the basic would be very crucial. For the other people, for the other community out there, don't be worried about nanotechnology. We're doing our job with the rest of like the nanotechnology community or scientific community to make it like as safer as possible. And then our goal, as I mentioned, is to actually help develop, as well as, you know, help companies and industries to achieve their strategic agenda or roadmap for having, you know, sustainable products and services, which would help not just the community but also our climate. So we hope that we us all together can help, you know, the country and also, you know, the globe in terms of coming up with, you know, sustainable materials and sustainable community, as well as help, you know, alleviate in our own way climate change. Thank you.
All right, grabe. Thank you so much, Pastor Jerome. Thank you so much for what you do, and you know, for what your company is intending to do for the Philippines. So siguro po, Dr. Givas and Dr. Boyles, ano po bang ating takeaway from this talk? So ako po, sisimulan ko siguro, no. It's good to see that kumbaga yun pong there are startup companies like Nanotronics Incorporated, with Dr. Palaganas, na supported po talaga ng ng DOST, for example, ng ating government, and they're also making some headways when it comes to forming partnerships with the private sector sa Philippines. So kumbaga, you know, maganda po yung mensaheng ibinigay niya na yung nanotechnology medyo bata pa siya sa Pilipinas. So pero just because bago doesn't mean hindi tayo makakahabol. So sana po supportahan po natin in any capacity that we can yung pong mga kaparehas po na institutions ng Nanotronics, kasi po yung pong mga kumbaga first movers when it comes to these types of industries, sila po talaga yung mag-lead ng way para ma-develop yung pong area sa atin sa Pilipinas. So sir, the best of luck po in what you do. But then perhaps like Dr. Dindin and Dr. Gibas, are there comments that you would like to make?
No, I just think that Dr. Jerome is doing a very good thing in the country. Yun, kumbaga history maker kayo, sir. So we're wishing you all the best sa inyong company, and it really yung vision ninyo po really aligns well also with the PhilSci-Hub vision. Yun yung vision natin, is to strengthen the STEM sa Philippines, and we're really glad, you know, that we have that same vision. So all the best po.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Dr. Jerome Hubbers, he has shown you how when he wants something, you go out and arm yourself. So he did a master's in business because he wanted to be an entrepreneur. And then he did something else to learn more on what he was going to do. So that's what we have to do. We go to STEM. If we need to learn some more things, then go out and study. It doesn't hurt to become a perennial student. It's good.
Yep. Well, I think yeah, everyone like lahat po na nasa video panel niyo po ngayon. So, Dr. Gibas for one, if you would also if you end up like seeing her resume, actually siya po yung male counterpart ni Sir Jerome na encounter ko in my lifetime na ang dami po talagang mga pinagdaanan. But then you see the sense of purpose, ano? Hindi po yung mga kaparehas po nila, hindi lang po yung randomly, ay gusto ko lang nito, gusto ko lang yan. So, kumbaga meron pong tema yung mga pinipili nilang specialization and once nakita na po ninyo yung mga yung background na binuo nila, it all makes sense. It's quite thematic. It's towards a specific goal which they are realizing now. So si Sir Jerome, when it comes to entrepreneurship sa nanotechnology, Dr. Gibas for example, when it comes to clinical mycology, Dr. Boyle, she's actually like an industrial chemist. So she's working for one of the biggest, if not the biggest, oil and paint companies in the world. So ano po siya doon? You're a quality assurance manager at PPG. So yan po. So what we're really trying to also do here po is deliver these inspirational messages and stories of Filipinos who have actually forged fairly prolific careers in their respective areas. And kumbaga kasama na po sa portfolio na ito ang storya ni Sir Jerome Palaganas. And so with that, we would like to share or present this certificate of appreciation to Dr. Jerome Palaganas, so co-founder and CEO of Nanotronics Incorporated, for delivering the webinar, What You Need to Know About Nanotechnology and Its Emerging Applications for Entrepreneurship in the Philippines. So organized by the Filipino Science Hub and held via Zoom and YouTube Live on the 4th day of June 2022. No? Napaka-advance ko naman. Futuristic, no? So given this 4th day of June 2022, signed by yours truly and Mr. JP Onya, Vice President of the Filipino Science Hub. So Sir Jerome, maraming salamat po ulit sa pagpapaunlak po ninyo sa amin. So we would also like to ask this opportunity po if we could have like a picture po, a virtual picture po with you. Kasama po kami and then the rest of our participants. So mauna na muna po kaming apat, no, para po malagay natin sa PhilSci Hub website. So like on the count of 3 po. 1, 2, 3. And one more. And then siguro po we would also like to request yung ating participants only if you're comfortable po to kumbaga na buksan niyo po ang inyong mga camera para magkakasama po tayo. Alright, 1, 2, 3. Alright, teka, tanggalin ko lang po yung spotlights para makapag-gallery view tayo, ano? Para kasama lahat. So, muli, maraming salamat po kasi alam niyo po, hindi po kami nawawala ng ganang gawin ito kada Sabado kasi nakikita po namin yung kumbaga po drive ng ating mga Pilipinong estudyante, mga mag-aaral at guro na kumbaga po patuloy po na matuto sa iba't ibang areas ng science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So we do have 3 panels po. We would like to request dun po sa mga game na buksan po ang kanilang cameras. Ito naman po, hindi po natin ipopost ito sa Facebook. Pwede po namin itong isend sa inyo if you would like to request for it. So okay, on the count of 3 po. 1, 2, 3. Ayan. So that's the first panel. Mukhang shy yung iba. Nagbukas ng camera. So tama na, okay lang po yan. Tama na po siguro. Muli, maraming salamat po. And then at this point, ayan po, kopyahin ko lang po, we will be ilalagay po namin sa aming chat box sa YouTube at saka sa Zoom, yun pong link para po sa ating attendance certificate. So please bear with me po. Ayan. So nasa na po yan, makikicopy and paste na lang po niyang link na yan para po makapag-request kayo ng attendance certificate. Alright, so muli, and if ever po magkaroon po kayo ng issue accessing the link, please makikivisit na lang po ng PhilSci Hub Facebook page namin. I-repost po namin doon yung link para po kumbaga makapag-request kayo ng attendance certificate. Alright, so with that, maraming salamat po. Sir Jerome, maraming salamat po uli sa inyo. We hope that we can invite you again. Hopefully in the future, kapag po meron ng mga updates para po sa when it comes to nanotronics, hopefully at that point, sobrang laki na po ng kumpanya. Alright?
Thank you, Dr. Jerome.
Maraming salamat
Thank you.
po. Okay, and with that, we would like to conclude this session. We would also like to thank Dr. Gibas and Dr. Dindy Boyles for joining us tonight. So again, maraming salamat po. Mag-ingat po kayo palagi. And then by the way po, June 24th, we will have the 5th installment of our program, Chemistry Made Easy. So ito po ay mga Tagalog-English lectures sa chemistry na sobrang pinasimple para lahat ng estudyante at mga guro ay kumbaga ma-master nila yung mga iba't ibang fundamental topics in chemistry. So this time around, we'll talk about chemical reactions featuring Professor Chester Dabalo. So ako po, siya po yung teacher ko sa UP. So napakagaling po. So June 24th, or June 25 po, that's a Saturday. Okay, see you in 2 weeks po, in 3 weeks. Maraming salamat po ulit. Mag-ingat kayo. Bye!
Bye.
Thank you.